Voltage High Society, in its current, extremely early access form, is weird and bewildering, but also intriguing and full of potential. According to the developer, Platonic Partnership, this early build of their first-person Metroidvania only offers 20-odd minutes of gameplay with a thin narrative veneer. In practice, the interconnected level design, multiple paths, deadly creatures, and a boss fight provided a tense and grueling experience, which kept me tentatively exploring for almost 2 hours. High Voltage Society takes place in a dystopian future in which an offshore island city has become infested with cybernetic fusions of robotic skeletons and organic tissue. If your protagonist, seemingly a prisoner for undisclosed crimes, can gather enough data for the authorities and escape, they have a chance of extraction, freedom, and even a cash bonus. Unfortunately, most of that background comes from the storefront description and snippets of dialogue from two fellow prisoners lingering on the rooftop starting location. There are some poorly written text logs, usually found in abandoned terminals and dark corners, that hint at the source of the disaster that befell the city, but there's no cohesive narrative trajectory, at least not yet. Thankfully, the gameplay, even in its current state, is far more interesting. You can run, jump, and clamber around the world with relative ease, occasionally interacting with terminals or buttons to add a data cube location to your HUD, or maybe open a shortcut. The traditional Metroidvania elements, encompassing combat, light puzzling, and opening up alternative routes, relies on assigning gear to either hand. At first, you're limited to punching robotic skeletons to death and searching for breakable barricades, but you'll soon find a taser that allows you to stun punch enemies and activate electrical panels. For now, it looks like equipment is only found in the world, whereas defeating enemies, punching containers, and exploring out-of-the-way corners often nets you scrap that can be spent on passive abilities at a weird lizard-like merchant. Think more health, double jumping, and breathing underwater. In fact, punching containers, or any sort of physics object, is an essential mechanic, especially in boss arenas, as they tend to spit out health shards and energy shards that power your pitiful torch and taser. Combat on the whole is awkward. It relies on a strike-dodge-counter rhythm, but it's hard to tell when you're in range to strike or far enough away to avoid a hit. On the upside, the single boss battle was all about staying mobile and triggering switches at the right time, rather than a clunky fight. It's a puzzle-like design choice I hope they stick to. Voltage High Society currently has a roguelite progression system that's forgiving when it comes to combat, but unforgiving when it comes to hoarding enough scraps for upgrades. Radiant green couches serve as a checkpoint when you fall, but any enemies you've killed stay dead, and the damage you've dealt to a boss is retained. However, any scrap you've collected is dropped, soul style, but A, it's difficult to find enough to get any significant upgrade in the first place, and B, it's easy to lose that dropped pile in many situations, like scripted level destruction or falling out of bounds if you're near the edge of the playable space. These decisions result in a compelling mix of cautious exploration followed by recklessness once you've got a feel for the level layout and have cleared out some lesser foes. By far, Voltage High Society's strongest element is the presentation and atmosphere, rough as it may seem in video clips and screenshots. It's weird, confusing, unsettling and sinister, but also a little goofy. The visuals use that blocky texture warping, early 3D style from the mid-90s, with some sprite-based decals, the sort of visuals that were commonplace on the PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn consoles. Enemies are far from geometrically complex, but they still look distinctive and horrifying. Think a mix of robotic skeletons, metallic weapons, and deformed fleshy bits. The color palette and lighting, at least so far, range from desaturated grayscale to garish neon colors, while the one modern feature is real-time shadows that make exploring by torchlight terrifying. Parts of the world are incredibly dark, and there's a massive sense of relief when you find an exit or a shortcut back onto the streets or rooftops. Of course, a strong visual style is nothing without a decent soundscape, and Voltage High Society does a great job with limited assets. Traversal and combat sound fine, but it's the distorted cries of the enemies and unsettling background ambience that maintain a creepy atmosphere. The music is also a highlight, with what's currently on offer mostly subdued electronic tracks, but they transition smoothly as you move about, giving each area a distinct feel. Now, there's no denying Voltage High Society looks and plays rough in early access, especially the stock half-functional menus and HUD, but there's potential here for a compelling and unsettling horror-themed Metroidvania. When I wasn't falling through level geometry, I was creeping forward through the gloom, hoping to find a new tool and a path forward, rather than a quick death at the hands of some lumbering cybernetic monstrosity. It's a bare-bones mechanical experience for now, but the level design and incredible atmosphere, think dystopian cyberpunk by way of Silent Hill, feels novel and worth supporting.